The moon hung low over the Mumbai slums, casting eerie shadows on the makeshift homes and narrow alleyways where I spent my days. My name is Arav Mehta, a young boy of 10, living in these slums with my mother, Mrs. Mehta, and my ailing younger sister, Aditi. We were crammed into a single room, our only refuge from the chaos outside. I stood at the entrance to our home, the warm, musky air clinging to my skin as I peered into the darkness. The night was alive with whispers, hushed voices that carried tales of otherworldly beings and chilling legends. My heart raced with a mix of fear and fascination as the wind sent shivers down my spine. A sudden gust blew through the cramped spaces between the tin-roofed shanties, causing loose doors to creak and rattle. I couldn't help but feel watched, as if unseen eyes were observing my every move. The slums had taken on a sinister quality at night, the familiar sights distorted by the dim glow of flickering lanterns and the silvery moonlight. As I ventured deeper into the labyrinthine alleys, I noticed strange symbols etched onto the crumbling brick walls. They seemed ancient and mysterious, their meanings long forgotten, yet somehow still potent. The hairs on the back of my neck prickled, and I fought the urge to turn back. This was my world, and I refused to be intimidated by the superstitions that gripped my neighbors. I navigated through the twisting passages, my bare feet finding purchase on the uneven ground. The darkness was both a friend and an enemy, concealing treacherous obstacles while also shielding me from prying eyes. With each step, I felt more attuned to the hidden side of the slums, the secrets that lurked just beneath the surface. In the distance, a dog howled mournfully, its voice echoing through the night like a ghostly siren call. I wondered if it sensed the same unseen presence that haunted my dreams. The world around me seemed to hold its breath, waiting for something terrible to emerge from the shadows. But nothing did. And as I stood there, amidst the darkness and the whispers, I knew that I was not alone in my fear. Our community was bound together by these stories, by the knowledge that we were all vulnerable to the unknown forces that prowled the edges of our lives. It was a sobering thought, but also strangely comforting, for no matter how terrifying the legends became, we would always have each other to rely on. I made my way back home, my heart still pounding from my nocturnal adventure. As I entered our cramped room, I saw Aditi sleeping peacefully, his weakened frame barely stirring beneath the thin blanket. My mother sat nearby, her eyes filled with a mix of exhaustion and determination. "Is everything all right?" she asked softly, her voice trembling ever so slightly. "Everything's fine," I reassured her, doing my best to sound confident. "Just needed some fresh air." With that, I settled down beside my sister, listening to the steady rhythm of her breathing as sleep finally claimed me. And as darkness gave way to dawn, I knew that whatever terrors the slums held, we would face them together. For in this world of shadows and secrets, family was the one thing that could never be taken away. I couldn't help but shudder at the memory of the chilling tale that haunted my thoughts. The Monkey Man. A creature said to be half monkey, half man, was believed to lurk within the dark depths of Mumbai's sewers. He was a fearsome figure in our community's legends. His grotesque appearance and unnatural agility evoked terror in anyone who dared to speak his name. The adults warned us to stay away from the sewer entrances, lest we become the next victim of the Monkey Man's sinister wrath. As a child, the mere thought of this creature sent me into fits of uncontrollable trembling, but as I grew older, I found it increasingly difficult to believe in such an absurd tale. It seemed more likely that the legend had been concocted by the elders as a means to keep us away from the dangerous sewers, a cautionary tale meant to protect us from harm. Despite the skepticism that clouded my thoughts, there was a part of me, an irrational, primal part, that still feared the existence of the Monkey Man. Perhaps it was the spine-tingling whispers shared among my peers or the haunting tales passed down through generations. Regardless, the fear persisted, lurking in the darkest corners of my mind like a malevolent specter. "Come on," I muttered to myself, shaking my head in an attempt to dispel the discomfort that gripped me. "It's just a story. Nothing more." But even as I tried to convince myself of this fact, the shadows around me seemed to grow darker, more menacing. In the silence of the night, my imagination began to run wild, conjuring horrifying images of the Monkey Man's twisted form emerging from the shadows to claim me as his next prey. I could almost hear his raspy laughter, feel his cold, inhuman touch. "Stop it," I whispered fiercely, clenching my fists and gritting my teeth. "It's not real." Yet, despite my best efforts to rationalize away my fear, the legend of the Monkey Man continued to haunt me. And as I sat there on that rooftop, shivering beneath the gaze of the moon, I couldn't help but wonder if there was some truth to the stories after all. I clutched the damp cloth, wringing it out before pressing it gently to Aditi's forehead. Her skin burned beneath my fingertips, a stark contrast to the coolness of the evening air drifting in from the open window. A bead of sweat trickled down her temple, mingling with the few strands of hair clinging to her damp skin. In the dim light of our cramped room, her pale face seemed to glow, an eerie luminescence that tugged at the fraying edges of my resolve. Aditi's breathing came in ragged gasps, each one sending a spike of fear through my heart. I couldn't remember when she had last opened his eyes or murmured a coherent word. The fever had taken hold of her, a silent thief stealing away her strength. Our mother sat beside the bed, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her gaze fixed on Aditi's face. Her presence was a quiet anchor in the storm, but even she could not hide the helplessness that shadowed her features. The doctor's fees were a mountain we could not hope to scale. Resources had been scarce since father passed, leaving us to navigate the rough waters of life with little more than each other. I knew then what I had to do. There was no time for second guessing, no room for doubt. Aditi needed me, and I would traverse hell itself if it meant bringing back even a sliver of hope for her. I rose, my limbs stiff with tension, and slipped into my shoes. They were worn from countless journeys through the city's veins, but tonight they would carry me on a different kind of quest. Lakshmi Desai's name had always been spoken in hushed tones, her reputation woven from whispers and the occasional odd exclamation. They said she could coax wellness from the jaws of death, her remedies steeped in ancient wisdom and shrouded in mystery. With a final glance at Aditi's fever-ridden form, I stepped out into the night. Mumbai slept fitfully around me, her dreams punctuated by the distant hum of traffic and the occasional dog's bark. My mind raced with thoughts of Lakshmi, of the healer who might hold the key to pulling Aditi back from the precipice. I had to find her, had to plead for her aid. And so I walked, every step a silent promise to the sister who lay battling her own inner darkness, unaware of the journey unfolding in his name. The night clung to Mumbai like a shroud, its inky fingers prying into every crevice of the dense urban labyrinth. The narrow beam of my flashlight cut through the darkness ahead, pale and trembling. I stepped over a gutter where murky water whispered secrets as it flowed past my feet. Each shadow seemed to watch me, bristling with silent threats. Alleys twisted like serpents before me, each turn a gamble of direction. My heart thrummed against my ribs, keeping time with the quickened pace of my footsteps. The scent of rain on hot pavement lingered in the air, a reminder of the storm that had passed and the tempest within me that had yet to break. In my pocket, my hand clasped the crumpled piece of paper with Lakshmi Desai's address, the ink smudged by my sweaty fingers. Stifling the urge to call out, to fill the void with the sound of my own voice, I pressed on. An errant cat darted from one pool of shadow to another, its silhouette a fleeting whisper against the backdrop of refused bins and discarded debris. I flinched, muscles tensing, only to relax as reality settled back into place. Aditi's face, pallid and slick with fever, haunted me each time I blinked. It spurred me forward beyond caution, deeper into the city's belly. A chill traced the nape of my neck, not from the night air, but from the burden that rested squarely upon my shoulders, a weight forged from love, fear, and an unwavering resolve. I was alone, a solitary figure navigating through the concrete veins of a slumbering giant, driven by the singular purpose of a brother's vow. Each step was a silent incantation, a hope cast into the vastness, seeking the healing grace of a woman who might well be a myth. But for Aditi, for the chance to see her smile again, free of pain, any myth was worth chasing. The city's breath grew colder, whispering secrets through the alleys as I ventured further from the dim glow of sparse street lamps. Each corner turned was a descent into deeper darkness, one that threatened to swallow me whole. Shadows clung to the walls, stretching out like fingers to grasp at my resolve. I navigated the labyrinth with nothing but the faint moonlight and the distant hum of Mumbai's restless heart to guide me. The streets here were unfamiliar, lined with the skeletons of forsaken buildings and overripe with the scent of decay. Rats scurried among the rubble, their tiny eyes glinting like stolen jewels, indifferent to my plight. A sudden gust sent shivers down my spine as it carried the stench of rotting garbage, mingling with the acrid fumes from unseen fires. My steps faltered, but the image of Aditi lying still in his bed, a silent plea etched upon his features, pushed me onward. Sweat gathered at my brow, not solely from exertion but from dread cloaked in determination. I skirted a gaping pothole, the edges crumbling like the promises of quacks and charlatans who had offered false hope. This healer, Lakshmi Desai, she couldn't be just another cruel joke played by fate. The possibility of her powers, however whispered and shrouded in folklore, bore a thread of hope I clung to with every fiber of my being. A rustle above jolted me, and for a fleeting moment, I wondered if the monkey man watched from the shadows, his presence an omen of the night's dark offerings. I shook my head, dispelling the thought as quickly as it came. Superstitions held no ground when set against a brother's love. With each step, the city seemed to fold in on itself, a maze crafted by some unseen hand to test the wills of desperate souls. Yet I marched through its entrails, driven by a force far greater than fear, a force kindled in the soft warmth of Aditi's trusting gaze. The night pressed closer, a palpable entity that sought to disorient and consume. But within me burned a quiet fire, one that lit my path and fortified my spirit against the horrors that lay draped in the depths of the night. In the silence of my own heartbeat, I found the rhythm to carry on, to face whatever awaited in the unseen hours before dawn. I slipped through the labyrinth of narrow lanes, a maze that pulsed with the heartbeat of the slums. The sky, a somber blanket above, held no stars tonight, and the moon hid behind bales of monsoon clouds. My feet found familiar grooves in the dirt path, worn by countless others who had tread this path before me. Shadows clung to the walls like leeches, sucking away any semblance of comfort. The further I ventured, the more the darkness seemed to swell around me, as if it were alive, breathing and watching. It was a darkness so thick, I felt it brush against my skin, raising goosebumps on my arms despite the humidity. The clattering and clangs of the slum's daily life faded behind me, replaced by a silence that wasn't quite silent. A whisper here, a rustle there, as if the night itself conspired to speak in riddles. A sudden hiss from below jolted me. My heart lurched, pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I paused, crouching low, my gaze piercing the blackness beneath my feet. From the depths of the sewers, strange, guttural noises crept upward, weaving their way through the metal grates. They were sounds that didn't belong to the world of men, sounds that twisted the insides and set the imagination ablaze with thoughts of feral creatures lurking just out of sight. I steadied my breath, forcing it slow and even, trying to silence the tremor in my hands. Every instinct screamed at me to flee, to dart back towards the flickering lights and muffled voices of home. But Aditi's pale face, her eyes filled with trust, anchored me. For her, I would brave the whispers of the dark, the unseen watchers, and the eerie chorus rising from the city's underbelly. With each step, I pushed deeper into the heart of the slums, where even the darkness seemed afraid to dwell. My feet slapped the damp cobblestones, the echoes of my steps swallowed by the dense fog that clung to the slum's veins like a disease. The stench of decay was thick in the air, a tangible reminder of the despair that saturated these narrow alleys. My breath formed ghostly plumes in the chill, each exhale a visible testament to the fear that threatened to claw its way up my throat. I could feel the weight of unseen eyes tracking my progress, the sensation of being hunted prickling at the nape of my neck. Yet I pressed on, the image of Aditi's frail body lying in our makeshift home propelling me forward with an urgency that overrode the screaming warnings of my instincts. Her whispered pleas echoed in my mind, spurring my legs when they begged to stop, to turn around and escape this suffocating labyrinth. The deeper I ventured, the more oppressive the silence grew. It was as if the very air anticipated violence, charged with an electricity that made my skin crawl. Each shadow seemed to shift, harboring secrets that gnawed at the edges of my resolve. The rumor of Lakshmi Desai's dwelling loomed in my thoughts, a beacon of hope amidst the encroaching dread. With every corner turned, the darkness appeared to thicken, drinking in the scant light from the few flickering lanterns that hung like weary sentinels along the path. I moved with caution, a predator amid predators, relying on instinct honed from a lifetime spent navigating these treacherous streets. My ears strained for the slightest disturbance, the scrape of a shoe, or the softest whisper of cloth against brick. As I neared the place whispered about in hushed tones, the healer's den, my senses stretched taut, prepared for any threat that might spring from the shadows. The atmosphere was alive with a bizarre energy, one that seemed to resonate with both promise and peril. I knew that within these walls lay either salvation for Aditi or a fate far worse than the disease that ravaged her. And so, with each cautious step, I delved deeper into the realm where only the desperate dared to tread, guided by love's unwavering compass and the faint, flickering hope of a cure. The ramshackle door of the healer's hut creaked open with my trembling hand pushing against its weathered wood. A step inside, and the musty odor of ancient herbs and dust-laden pages filled my nostrils. My sense of fleeting relief shattered as a shadow stretched across the cracked earthen floor, twisting into an ominous silhouette that clawed at my sanity. There, framed by the doorway, loomed the Monkey Man. His presence was a grotesque tapestry of man's brutality and nature's feral essence. Sinewy limbs, covered in matted fur as dark as the moonless night, bent in unnatural ways. Long, gnarled fingers ended in nails that resembled the daggers of some primal beast, scraping against the ground with every subtle movement he made. His torso, a contorted mass of muscle and scars, heaved with breaths that sounded like the rasping of dead leaves on a cold wind. His face, if one could call it that, bore the mockery of humanity etched into a canvas of animalistic rage. Eyes, yellowed and bloodshot, glinted with an intelligence that was neither human nor benign, fixating on me with predatory focus. The snout, twisted in a permanent sneer, revealed jagged teeth that interlocked like the barred gates to a tomb. A growl rumbled from his throat, low and guttural, the sound dredging up primal fears long buried in the recesses of my mind. Every hair on my body stood on end, a silent testament to the terror the creature inspired. The air grew thick with the scent of danger, a pungent mix of sweat and the raw musk that emanated from his heaving form. I could not move, could not speak, but only observe as the very embodiment of urban legend and childhood nightmare stood before me, breathing life into stories I had dismissed as mere folklore. The healer's haven, once a beacon of hope, now felt like the final stage of a macabre dance with death. The Monkey Man was no myth, he was flesh, fur, and fury, a harbinger of horror poised on the threshold of violence. The creature took a lumbering step forward, and the paralysis that gripped me shattered. I turned on my heel, raw instinct propelling me away from the healer's doorway, away from the twisted snarl of the Monkey Man. His guttural growls morphed into shrieks that scored the night air as I stumbled into a desperate sprint. The narrow alleyways of Mumbai transformed into a labyrinthine trap, walls closing in, suffocating, as if conspiring with the beast that hunted me. My breaths came in ragged gasps, each inhale sharp as shards of glass. Heartbeat thundered in my ears, an erratic drumline syncing with the rapid thud of my feet against the dirt-strewn pavement. A glance over my shoulder revealed the gleam of malevolence in his eyes, a beacon of dread that promised torment. The Monkey Man was not just chasing, he was toying with me, his movements a blur of preternatural speed and agility. The city's cacophony faded into the background, eclipsed by the singular focus of survival, of the need to escape this relentless predator. I ducked into an alley so narrow that my shoulders brushed against its walls. The stench of decay hung heavy, but fear churned my stomach more than the odor of rot could. I wove through forgotten debris, boots slipping on slick, moist ground as the echo of his pursuit grew terrifyingly closer. An open drain loomed ahead, its gaping maw a black void that threatened to swallow me whole. With no time to second guess, I leaped, barely clearing the edge, the drop behind me now a chasm between life and death. The chase continued, each turn a gamble, each straightaway a stretch of hope rapidly diminishing as the shadow of the Monkey Man loomed ever larger. In this urban jungle, every sound became a potential harbinger of my end, the distant bark of a stray dog, the clatter of loose bricks, even the beating of my own heart, a frantic metronome counting down the seconds of my flight. And still, his presence was a force at my back, driving me onward, fear sharpening my senses to a razor's edge. The path ahead blurred into a mere suggestion, but I dared not slow, for to do so would be to succumb, and surrender was a luxury I could not afford, not with the embodiment of terror itself breathing down my neck, relentless as the grave. My heart thudded against my ribcage as I plunged deeper into the sewers, the stench of decay wrapping around me like a shroud. The monkey man was somewhere behind me, his presence more felt than seen, a specter that haunted every step I took. Water sloshed against my ankles, cold and relentless, as I navigated the twists and turns of this subterranean maze. The beam from my flashlight trembled in my grasp, casting jittery shadows on the damp walls. They seemed to close in with every breath I took, the narrow passages compressing the air until it felt thick in my lungs. Panic clawed at my throat, each corner I rounded offering no exit, only another stretch of grimy tunnel. Somewhere in the distance, the echo of movement bounced off the stone, a skittering, unnatural sound that was neither entirely animal nor human. It was him, the monkey man, navigating this darkness with an ease that chilled my blood. His legend, once just whispers on the city streets, now pursued me with unyielding determination. I stumbled over an unseen obstacle, catching myself against the slick wall, my hands coming away wet and grimy. My breath came out in ragged gasps, the air heavy with moisture and fear. The labyrinth seemed alive, its pathways shifting and turning with a mind of their own, ensnaring me further within its bowels. Above, the distant hum of the city was a cruel reminder of a world beyond reach. Below, the sewers promised only despair. And all the while, the relentless monkey man drew nearer, a phantom blurring the lines between myth and terrifying reality. My pulse hammered in my ears, a frenetic drumbeat as I darted through the serpentine tunnels. The stench of decay clung to the stagnant air, thick enough to taste. I could almost feel the monkey man's breath on my neck, his presence an oppressive weight against my spine. Every shadow seemed to move, every drip of water sounded like his stealthy footsteps. I slid around a corner, nearly losing my footing on the slick stone. My heart thundered against my ribs, each beat a deafening roar in the silence that followed my frantic footfalls. I had long since abandoned the hope of a straight path to safety now. All that mattered was putting distance between myself and the creature. But the more I ran, the more the murky labyrinth appeared to loop back on itself, a Mobius strip of terror. The flicker of movement at the edge of my vision pushed me to the brink, a silhouette that vanished when I snapped my head around. Could it be that he was not behind but ahead, herding me like prey? An animalistic part of my brain screamed to fight, to stand my ground, but survival dictated I run. Sweat mingled with the dampness on my skin, making me shiver despite the exertion. My limbs felt heavy, as if the very air in this cursed place sought to drag me down into the muck. I stumbled again, catching myself on a wall etched with the imprints of time, the grooves digging into my palms. Was this real, or was the darkness playing tricks on my mind? The echo of a laugh, or was it a shriek? Ricocheted off the walls, sending a fresh wave of panic surging through me. It was a sound that didn't belong to the world of the living, a twisted symphony that strangled any semblance of reason. I pressed onward, each step an argument between the primal urge to flee and the creeping notion that perhaps I was merely sprinting through the chambers of my own fractured psyche. Time lost meaning. There were only moments of breathless flight punctuated by flashes of paralyzing terror. The certainty of the tangible world dissolved, replaced by a dreamscape painted with dread. A splash of water, the rustling of something unseen, the line between senses and imagination blurred, leaving me adrift in a sea of doubt and darkness. Was the monkey man a specter conjured from the depths of my unraveling mind? Or was he the embodiment of every nightmare given form, relentlessly pursuing me through a maze with no end? Each question multiplied the shadows, each doubt fed the legend's power. And as I ran, the sewers whispered their own truth, one that promised no escape from the madness that hunted me. Panting, my back slammed against the damp sewer wall, the stench of decay mocking my every breath. The pursuit had been relentless, the monkey man an agile shadow weaving through the labyrinth beneath Mumbai's streets like a phantom born of urban legend. In the flickering light from the storm drain above, I glimpsed the creature's mangled form, a patchwork of fur and flesh that defied nature. I had cornered myself, the gritty taste of fear mingling with the musty air in my mouth. Desperation clawed at my mind as I fumbled with the rusted metal pipes protruding from the bricks. A low, guttural growl echoed, bouncing off the claustrophobic tunnel walls, and I knew it was close. Then, amidst the squalor, my trembling fingers brushed against something unexpected, a sheaf of papers, partially concealed behind a loose stone. Frantic, I yanked them free, my heart lurching as the incandescent beam of my dying flashlight revealed diagrams, notes scrawled in a frenzied hand, detailing an abomination of science. The truth unfurled in the dimness, grotesque and undeniable. This was no mythic beast, but a creation birthed from the twisted intellect of a scientist unhinged. The documents told of genetic manipulation, of DNA spliced and reconfigured, a perverse mix of primate and human genes. The horror sank its teeth into my psyche. The monkey man was never meant to exist, a victim as much as a monster. A shadow loomed, and the air grew denser with menace. The mad architect of this living nightmare was near, his presence an oppressive force pressing against the boundaries of my sanity. The monkey man's silhouette danced within the reach of the light, quivering as if mirroring my own torment. The creature had haunted the city's nightmares, a specter woven into the fabric of local folklore, but the reality was far more malignant. It bore the scars of human folly, a testament to ambition unhinged and ethics discarded. I clutched the damning evidence, the weight of the truth heavier than the fetid water soaking through my shoes. Above the chase and the fear, the greatest terror was the knowledge that humanity could breed such darkness. Pulse pounding in my ears, I bolted through the labyrinthine tunnels, the stench of decay hot on my heels. Every shadow seemed to twitch with the potential for terror, but I forced my legs to pump faster, driven by the primal urge to survive. The monkey man's guttural shrieks echoed off the dank walls, a chilling symphony to my flight. Behind him, the scientist's manic energy was an unseen wave, propelling the creature forward. I rounded a corner, feet slipping on slick stones, and glimpsed daylight trickling through a distant grate. Hope surged, lending me a burst of speed. My breath came in ragged gasps, each one tasting of damp earth and desperation. I dared not look back. The images of spliced genes and monstrous ambition were imprinted on the inside of my skull, vivid and unrelenting. The gap between salvation and damnation narrowed as I reached the grate, fingers grappling wildly to find purchase. Above, the sky blushed with the first hints of dawn, a cruel reminder of the world that continued, oblivious to the horrors below. With a strength born of fear, I wrenched the barrier aside and clambered into the waking city. The cool morning air caressed my sweat-drenched skin as I collapsed onto the pavement, the cacophony of the sewers fading into a distant nightmare. Mumbai stretched out before me, its slums stirring to life, unaware of the darkness that lurked beneath their homes. The sun crested the horizon, casting a golden glow over the endless expanse of ramshackle roofs and narrow alleyways. I lay there, a solitary witness to the day's birth, my mind replaying the night's terrors in endless loops. The truth of the monkey man, a science experiment perverted into myth, would scar the fabric of my reality forever. As the city awoke, I knew the tale I carried was more than a story. It was a warning. Some nightmares, fleshed out in twisted labs, are all too palpably real.